Welcome back to the We See Monsters channel. I'm your host Jenna, and today I will be sharing with you all a very unsettling encounter told by someone whose family owns a funeral home. A fun fact about me, I've considered doing mortuary science on and off for several years, but when I come across encounters like this, I definitely start to second guess myself. Every single person that I have ever met that works in mortuary science has some sort of story to tell. And I just don't think that I'm brave enough to find out if these things are real on my own. With that being said, I give major props to anybody who works in this field. Let's go ahead and dive into this week's story. My family owns a funeral home. When I tell people this, I usually get one of two questions. Is it haunted? Or is it creepy working there? To the first question, no. Even though the house itself is old, it was built in the 1860s and bought by my great-great-grandfather in 1889. None of us have seen or heard anything especially unusual. In 2009, my dad was contacted by a producer of one of those ghost hunting TV shows because they'd heard rumors that it was haunted. My dad laughed and told the producer they were more than welcome to stop by, but he was sure nothing would happen. They didn't end up visiting, but there is an article about it floating around on the internet somewhere. Think of it like the funeral home being a liminal space. We're here on the Descendants' Way between places. It doesn't make much sense to haunt a place they had no emotional connection to, right? But to the second question, is it creepy working there? Yes. Sometimes it is. By the time I was born, the house had been completely turned into a funeral home, and my family lived in the house behind it. But for all intents and purposes, I did grow up there. Both of my parents work as funeral directors. My older brother is studying mortuary science, and I help out in the office and around the home, even though I'm not going to be in the business. This is all to say that we've all grown up in proximity to the funeral home, and I think every single one of us can say that while it isn't haunted, it can be creepy. Sometimes you hear the dead groan when gases release. Sometimes their bodies move due to muscles tensing and relaxing as they go through the stages of death. Occasionally, the descendant died in an accident that caused traumatic damage, and that ends up causing nightmares. We've taken care of people who died in all stages of life, the very young to the very old, and once in a while, a grieving family member or friend has a violent outburst. For us, this is just standard operating procedure. But every now and again, something happens that is truly creepy. Usually, this happens during the wake. My great-great-grandfather was an undertaker in England. When he came to the U.S., he brought a few traditions with him, which he included in the operation of the funeral home. One of these traditions was kind of an old-school wake. Regular wakes are the usual gatherings that you're probably used to, and some people use visitation and wake to mean the same thing. But the wake is a vigil that lasts all night. There are still cultures that do this, staying the night with the body to keep watch or pray. It's fallen out of fashion in modern times, but in my great-great-grandfather's will, he mandated that we should offer it as part of our services for as long as the funeral home continued to operate. I have no idea why he was so adamant on it, although one family story is that he said something like, "The people who ask for it are the ones who need it the most." So we offer it. It's on our list of services, along with the FTC's funeral checklist. My family's always been very upfront about costs. I could go on for hours about how messy and corrupt the funeral industry can be, but you're not here for that. And the wake is always a complimentary service. You only know about it if you ask. Here's how our booklet defines it. A vigil held after hours in the home, able to be attended by any family members or friends with permission. Our directors and associates can also participate as a proxy or otherwise as needed. Like wakes can be held up to 7 o'clock in the morning when funeral homes' operating hours begin. People have asked us what the like wake is good for, and we usually tell them that it gives people extra time to say goodbye, or just assures friends and family that the descendant is not alone in the house. Theft of valuables like jewelry is a concern for some people, so this little extra assurance can be comforting, but not many people take us up on it. Those that do sometimes ask us to hold it as proxies, or just for that aforementioned assurance. Sometimes 2 or 3 of us do it, and sometimes it's just one. A few months ago, it was just me. The descendant's sister had requested the like wake for her brother, asking for it to be held until operating hours began. For sake of his privacy, I'll just say that he was in his late 20s when he died. And while he'd been killed in an accident, the damage wasn't visible on his head or hands. His sister said that she had had some pretty disturbing dreams since his death where he was in the casket with his eyes closed, but his body was moving restlessly. She insisted she wasn't superstitious, but something about the dreams really worried her. We held the man's like wake on the night between the visitation and the funeral itself. The last visitor left at around 9:30 that evening, leaving just the parents and the sister. Before they left together, his sister came up to me and my mom and asked if she could leave an envelope in her brother's casket and to place his cell phone in his pocket. She said she felt weird having it. We told her she was more than welcome to do so. It only took her about a minute, and when she came back, she pulled me aside. "If anything happens tonight, will you tell me when I come back in the morning, please?" she asked. I was confused, but I said I absolutely would. Honestly, people have asked me weirder things. The family left, and my mom and I made all the preparations for the like wake. It's not as ritualistic as it sounds. We light a candle in the same room as the casket, do some basic cleanup, and fill any requests the family might have. Most of the time, it's to play certain songs or leave a particular food or drink out for them. One family asked us to read letters out loud to the deceased, some of which were incredibly funny. But in this man's case, we put a bottle of pale ale, 2 Twix bars, and a poetry book on the table beside the casket. Once that was done, I settled on the couch in the office for the night while my mom went home. Our rules for the like wake are pretty simple. I'd stay all night, catnapping if I had to, with alarms set for every hour and a half, so I would get up and go into the viewing area to make sure the candle was still lit and everything was in its proper place. Honestly, a funeral home at night isn't as scary as you would think. I kept the lights on in the office and main hallway, and I'm so used to being in that house that very few noises alarm me. However, around 1 o'clock in the morning, I heard 2 loud knocks, like someone banging their fist against a door. This like wake didn't have any scheduled visitors, so we kept the front and back doors locked. That, and I couldn't actually discern where the knocking came from. I looked at our security camera feed and didn't see anyone at either door. I wondered if something fell down upstairs. It's an old house, it happens. I went upstairs. Nothing. Everything was exactly where it should be. When I came back down the stairs, I heard it again. It was just as loud and insistent, if not more so. Just 2 heavy knocks coming from nowhere. I'm not scared of the house, but I was scared of something. I went down the hallway and on a whim, looked into the viewing area. Nothing was out of place there either, including the candle. For a few minutes, I stood there, waiting for something to happen. It was quiet. Then, 2 loud knocks from nowhere, followed by what sounded like every door in the house being knocked on twice. I mean front door, back door, side doors, office door, all the doors upstairs. I like to think I'm brave, but I absolutely did scream before running back into the office. I thought about calling my mom and dad, but something kept me from getting my phone. I don't know if I was just so scared I wasn't thinking straight or what, but I didn't contact anyone. It was quiet after that, and I spent most of the next hour and a half trying to logically reason out what would have caused the knocks. By the time I concluded that it was just old house noises, my alarm went off to go check the viewing area at 2:30. Reluctantly, I went. The candle was lit, everything was fine, except the man's cell phone was going off. In the amount of time I stood there, his phone never stopped vibrating, for 10 minutes. It may have gone on for longer, but I didn't stay around to find out. The 4 o'clock check was quiet. I was messaging my friend on Discord by this point, and said thank God at that. And then came the 5:30 check. Naturally, I was exhausted. I hadn't slept, and half the time between 4 and 5:30, I was all tense and waiting for that knocking to come back. I dragged myself into the viewing area and saw that the bottle of beer, Twix bars, and book were on the floor. The bottle was upright, and the Twix bars were still beside each other. Not like they'd fallen, but more like someone had picked up the display exactly as it was and placed it on the floor like that. And the candle was out. Don't ask me why, but the candle being out scared me more than the stuff on the floor. I turned around to go back to the office and get the lighter when I swear I saw the body in the casket sit up and look at me. It was totally dark except for the light in the hallway and the emergency exit lighting at the back of the room. But that was enough to make out the silhouette and the red light reflecting off his eyes. The thing is, my oldest sister put caps over his eyeballs and glued them shut to make sure they kept their shape and didn't sink. His eyes were wide open. I ran back to the office, faster than I've ever run in my life. There is such a thing as being too scared to scream, so I just sat in the locked room, huddled up in a corner, wondering what the hell was happening. I wanted to call my mom, but my phone was on the other side of the room, and for some reason, I was too afraid to get up and grab it. It must have been an hour before it happened. 2 loud knocks on the office door, and then silence. And then my phone buzzed. I forced myself to get up, even though I was dreading every step. I took my phone off the charger. "Everything okay?" From my mom. It was from my mom, and I almost cried in relief. I texted her back and asked her if she could come over earlier, although I didn't say why. She said she would be over in a few minutes. Those next few minutes were some of the longest in my life. In all my sleep-deprived fear, I was expecting to hear my mom come in and scream. Instead, I heard her come in, heard the door handle jiggle, and then she texted me to ask why the office door was locked. I let her in, and I absolutely did cry and hug her. I told her everything that happened, including the part about the candle going out and the body sitting up. She comforted me and then said, "But everything's fine in there." When I looked over her shoulder into the viewing area, I saw that the candle was lit and the bottle, Twix bars, and book were back on the table. My mom thought I might have had a nightmare, and in my desperation for things to make sense, I agreed with her. Even so, I sat in the office while she started all of the opening procedures. She said I could go home, but honestly, I just wanted to be around her for a little while longer. At 8 o'clock, the family started coming in, including the descendant's sister. She saw me. I don't want to know what she thought. I was in a hoodie and sweatpants and looked absolutely frazzled, and waved me over. She asked how the night had gone, or if anything had happened. I mentioned the knocking and the phone going off. Everything except the body sitting up. She immediately started crying. She didn't explain. Instead, she went into the viewing area for a few minutes and came back with the envelope and phone. Still crying, she held the envelope like it was the most precious thing in the world. Before he died, I got in a fight with him over something really stupid, she told me. I never got the chance to apologize. This is an apology letter, and I don't know why, but I felt like I had to write. At this point, she opened the envelope, unfolded the letter, and showed me the bottom of it. If you accept my apology, 1 knock for no, 2 knocks for yes. I can't describe how I felt at that moment. All that knocking, and those 2 knocks at the end of the night. Just yes, yes, yes. And then she showed me the call history on his phone. There, enough times that she had to scroll down, were calls from his work. This is actually my phone, she said. She started crying again, still scrolling through the calls. The day he died, he called me from his work phone, but I was still mad at him, so I didn't pick up. And when I called him back, he didn't answer. The thing is, after everything that happened, his sister seemed relieved rather than scared and thanked me for staying with him. After that, I went home and thought about what my great-great-grandfather said, that the people who ask for like wakes are the ones who need it the most. They need more closure than a regular funeral can provide. You can click the links below to find my TikTok and We See Monsters podcast, and be sure to hit the subscribe button for more spooky content from the We See Monsters channel.